Welcome, welcome, everybody. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our lunch keynote. Now, no one can speak to the power voters have in changing the trajectory of the judiciary like former North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Cheri Beasley. Cheri Beasley is a jurist who served as a North Carolina Associate Justice from 2012 to 2019 and was the first African American woman to serve as Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. A believer in the independence of the judicial branch that administers justice fairly and the role courts can play in helping people better their lives, Chief Justice Beasley has long advocated for judicial reforms for the people, such as expanding access to treatment courts and court accessibility. Now, Chief Justice Beasley will close out our morning together by elevating the power of every North Carolinian in building a more just North Carolina. Please welcome Chief Justice Beasley. Good afternoon. It is great to see everybody. I want to thank Sailor for extending the invitation for me to be here, and I understand that you all have had a wonderful, productive morning. This is quite a time, and it's quite a time for you all to have come together to recommitted yourselves to do this really great work. I was told that my topic is In Your Court, the Power of One Person to a More Just North Carolina. I remember, and it sort of feels in some ways like light years ago, that after the 2024 presidential election, that I was encountering lots of very angry conversations. That lots of people that I was talking to, they were just angry. People were angry. My students, I teach at Elon Law School, and my students were not just angry, but they were teary. My family members were teary and angry. Lots of my colleagues were angry and teary. Some of my church members were angry and teary. And I sort of felt like an enigma because I remember being disappointed, but I didn't remember really being angry. In some ways, I actually felt very inspired by the moment. I was inspired by the historical moment, understanding that an African American South Asian woman had never been the presidential nominee in this country, and that is not a small feat. I was inspired by the moment. And quickly, so many people had predicted gloom and doom. They just knew that so many bad things would happen early on. So many people were very worried, and veterans were worried, and so many things have happened in the interim. What I am encouraged about is today. I'm encouraged that people like you have been working. You will continue to work. You've always been working. You're the people that we've always been able to count on here in North Carolina. And I know that because I've been the beneficiary of your good works and your good deeds. And you know, and you've always known, that it's been important to stay the course, regardless of who's in office. And that's one thing about what happens in this life. That it's important to do justice work all of the time. And that's what really is important about understanding democracy work. That we can't just do it when things are not going our way. Or when things are good, we're celebrating and decide that we take our feet off of the gas pedal. Because the other thing that we know is that a whole lot of folks worked a whole lot and gave a whole lot before we were ever thought of for this moment. And so justice work is ongoing. And so the folks in this room know how important it is to stay the course. And so maybe that's why I was inspired by the presidential election. Maybe not pleased, but inspired by the presidential election, and that's why I'm inspired by this day, even in spite of media and pundits saying a whole lot of things and shows being canceled, and even though there are words being excluded like diversity, equity, and exclusion, where those are some words we're not supposed to be saying anymore, and even within law firms, and I'm a lawyer, lawyers, law firms. And I understand the importance of courts, because most of my professional life has been spent in courts. I was very fortunate to serve as a district court judge in Cumberland County for 10 years, and then on the Court of Appeals for 4 years, and 8 years on the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and 2 of the last years as your Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Oh, we collectively know a little bit about justice work here in North Carolina and the importance of our courts here in North Carolina. And the thing that we absolutely know is that courts must be about the work of the people here in North Carolina and protecting the constitutional rights of people here in North Carolina. But the other thing we also know is that those protections really don't start in courts. Those protections always start with everyday people getting fed up and taking a stand. And that those everyday people and those works work in tandem with the works that happen in the courts, in insisting that constitutional rights be protected. I had the privilege of spending some time with some former justices just this week, and I was made aware of the name of Louise Lassiter from Northampton County, who in 1958 brought a lawsuit here in North Carolina. She was denied the right to register to vote, like a lot of African Americans, because of the literacy test. The case went to the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and it was, of course, she was still denied the right to register to vote here in North Carolina, appealed, denied. And it was one of the cases that ultimately supported the many cases around the Southeast that went to the Supreme Court of the United States that supported the litigation that ultimately brought about the Voting Rights Act of 1964. And it was the Voting Rights Act of 1964 that allowed my late mother, Dr. Lou Beasley, who had a PhD, the right to vote in this country. So the work of the courts really does matter. We must stay the course. So good and fair courts really do matter. They've always mattered. And they don't just matter when our respective issues come up. The courts always matter. So many people are really concerned about what's happening with parties, both parties. But you continue to stay the course because it doesn't help to cast blame. It doesn't help to be worried about who's protecting themselves. We cannot forget why we are here, and we must always remember that the reason that we're here is so much bigger than ourselves. And we always must remember that we cannot be silenced, and we must not be afraid. This work takes courage to stand up for justice. So whatever the chaos and the challenges and the disruptions and the distractions, we must always remember that every vote really does matter. Now, I can only imagine that I was asked to be here because I am Exhibit A. And we can enjoy a chuckle about that today. And we can enjoy a chuckle about that today because we've been invested in this work. So this is family, and so I thank you for being here and allowing me to be here today. But I never thought that I would be the candidate. I started justice work at the age of 6. I remember going door to door with my mother. And there are a few of you, but not many, in this room who do not know what a 45 record is. But I remember the mayoral candidate's jingle was on a 45 record. And I remember us going door to door, passing out the jingle of this mayoral candidate. And from that moment, I was hooked. And from that moment until I became a judge, because I didn't know I was going to become a judge, I was always active, civically active and politically active, because I knew from the core of my being, because of the way I was raised, that it was my obligation to be engaged in that way. I never thought I would be the candidate. But it was because of her and people like her who invested and poured into me. And then when I came to North Carolina, it was because of you and people like James Williams and others of you in this room that I could blame, and Larry and others that I can blame in this room, who are responsible for the 6 elections that I've had in North Carolina. In 2014, I had an election to retain my seat on the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And in that year, I won that election by 5,014 votes. Statewide, that's not a lot of votes, right? And then you all know that in 2020, in a year that we were in the middle of a pandemic, and in a year that we were also in the midst of lots of unrest behind George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. In a year where also 5.5 million votes were cast in my race. In a year just like this year, you solidly and handily are perfected in knowing how to cure ballots, because you did for me, and I am incredibly thankful from the bottom of my heart. I fell short by 401 votes. 400. So the margin, I have made history in lots of ways here in North Carolina. 401 votes. Ouch. So roughly a month and a few days after the election, after lots of curing across the state of North Carolina by you and people just like you who cared about the importance of all elections in North Carolina, and you worked hard to cure ballots to make sure that these elections were fair and impartial and worked for everybody in this state. After we made sure that the process worked the way it was supposed to work, I called my opponent and I conceded the election, and I congratulated him and I wished him well. And over the next year and a half, lots of folks came up to me and said, Cheri, you know, in my precinct, if we'd worked just a little bit harder, we could have found those 402 votes. Or Cheri, if I'd just gone to my synagogue, we could have found those 402 votes and we could have made it happen. Oh, Cheri, I wish you were the Chief Justice. Oh, Cheri, if I'd just gone to... And on and on. For about a year and a half, I heard that almost every single day. Out of love, though, right? Because we were all feeling the thing. We had all worked so hard to make it happen. So it was a collective lamenting that I was feeling from people all over. If we had only done the thing, right? And so in the next election cycle, we were all doing the thing to make it happen because we didn't want to find ourselves in that situation. Again, because we understood the importance of all elections up and down the ballot, and we certainly understand the importance of court elections that are making decisions about people's everyday lives, whether they know it or not. We understand the importance of judicial integrity, that we have people sitting on our courts who believe in the Constitution of North Carolina and of this country. Oh, we understand why judicial elections are important in this state. And we understand why you are working so hard every single day. And we understand why judicial integrity is so important, because we also know and hear so much about how judges are being threatened because of the decisions that are being made, about some really tough issues coming before their courts. And I have honestly not talked a whole lot about this, but when I was Chief Justice, there were people calling my chambers, talking to my staff, and referring to me as nigger, the B word, and other kinds of derogatory things. We had security at my home. My sons had security at their respective universities. I had to explain to my neighbors what was happening. I have great neighbors, thankfully. And so it does take courage to make sure that we have people who are serving for the right reasons. So every moment is the right time to do the right thing. And that's why we are all here today. And that is why courts matter. And that's why your work matters. And the dedication matters. By the way, that also happened in my Senate race. We had security again. Would I change a thing? No. Because I will not be silenced. And so justice is not simple. The times tell us that. All times tell us that. It is not easy, and we did not sign up for easy. And unfortunately, I didn't sign up for safe. And a lot of people did not, unknowingly. But the work has to be done. And somebody's got to do it. And that's why this day is important. And that's why it's important to stay the course. Because justice doesn't just happen. We may not even see it manifest itself the way we want to see it manifest itself in this moment. But does it mean that the work is not important? Absolutely not. In fact, we don't even have the right to complain about it. We really don't when we think about the magnitude of the sacrifices of those who've come before us. We dare not complain. What we must do is give even more. And the other thing we must do is, yes, acknowledge the fact that what we are doing is right and sustainable, but also hold those accountable in our midst. If there are people around us, and y'all know, you've heard folks say, well, my son or my blah, blah, I'm sorry. People that close to you. People that close to you. Your values must be shared by the people that close to you. They must be. And we must vote our values. Votes are not some existential something out here in the ether. And there are no exceptions. None. Not for neighbors. Not for, but I know their heart. They said this, but I know their, They're insulting people who look like me. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. No, we gotta walk the walk. Can't just talk the talk. Because the walk doesn't always feel good. And a lot of people's feet were hurting who walked the walk before we had the privilege to walk the walk now. Justice is real business. And so, yes, for every single organization that you're a part of, we have a responsibility to make sure that people are registered to vote, and yes, that they are voting. Or else this is all for naught. You've put on an amazing day, and lots of resources and effort have gone to this day. And we have an obligation to make sure that we are looking out for those who are experiencing poverty, homelessness, and other kinds of things. I think Jesus experienced poverty. So there's got to be some consistency there, too. The Jesus people are quiet. Okay, so for those of us who believe in Jesus, we got to put some feet on those prayers now. Jesus people are quiet. Okay. But the exciting thing about voting is that voting empowers people. Everybody in here is a leader, and so we must be empowered to lead. And the beautiful thing, I see young people in here, and empowerment allows us to also plant. And when we have the ability to plant, we can plant seeds of hope, and seeds of trust, and seeds of opportunity, and seeds of growth, and seeds of belief and confidence, when we know from which that empowerment comes. What an amazing gift for all of us. So I'm excited about this moment. These are difficult times for so many people. There is suffering. And often from suffering, there is perseverance. And from perseverance, hope. But from hope, there is often victory on the other side. And for that, I am thankful. And so much of that is rooted from the work that you do right here. So thank you so much for every single thing you do. Know that this work is not in vain. You may not see the fruits of your labor immediately, but know that every single thing that you do, you are planting goodness and seeds of hope an opportunity. Stay the course and do not be distracted by the things around you, and make sure that you hold true to your values and the people around you do the same. And when we do that, ultimately, we win.
Amen.